Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of Soundbites for Immigration Success. We're happy to have you with us. My name is Monica O'Brien. I am the Manager of Education at CAPIC, along with looking after stakeholder engagement. We bring these series to you so you can get to know your fellow consultant, hear their story, their challenges and successes, and their final pieces of takeaway advice that hopefully you can bring back to your practice. I have with me today Matthew McDonald. Hi, Matthew. How are you?
Hey, Monica. I'm having a wonderful day today. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you. Matthew, tell us a little bit about yourself and what motivated you to enter the immigration profession.
Sure. My first encounter with immigration took place in about 2010 to 13. I was actually living overseas in Southeastern Europe, and I fell in love while I was living abroad. And my husband is from Macedonia in Southeastern Europe. And as we tried to figure out how to build our life together, we decided that I would sponsor him for permanent residence in Canada. So that was my first encounter with the Canadian immigration system through a personal journey, much like many other RCICs. And then, of course, when he moved with me to Toronto, I really got a firsthand look about what it's like adapting to Canada as an immigrant as well. And my work until that point had been in and around education. I was a teacher overseas. And then when I moved to Toronto, I actually got a job as an international student advisor at Humber College. And it was around the time that the DLIs needed to start licensing their staff. So I got licensed while I was working at Humber, so that in 2016, I became an RCIC and I could start offering immigration advice to students at the college. So my work really has been focused on the college and university sector and working with international students. I would have told you for years I had no intention of becoming a full-time RCIC because I was very satisfied working in the post-secondary sector. But then, just by word of mouth and reputation, people started asking me for help with different applications. And so on evenings and weekends, I started taking on clients. It was nice extra work. I would get to practice a bit with a little bit of extra income. But that began to snowball as I thankfully built a really good reputation for myself in Toronto, and especially among a lot of current and former international students. And then by late 2022, I found myself getting really stressed about just the volume of work that I couldn't keep up with. And so I ended up having a frank conversation with my husband. It was kind of like I needed to make a decision. And the decision we made was to take a bold move and to give self-employment a go. So since August 2023, I have been working full-time as a self-employed RCIC with my husband at my side. He decided to go into business with me. When we talked through about how I might transition to full-time self-employment, he dove in to join me in the business and really helped me figure out the business side of things so that I could focus more on the immigration side, more on working with clients. And so it's a really good partnership because he's a project manager by background. I'm client facing, and since August 2023, we've been working together.
Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing their story. It's a circuitous route. And as you say, so many of our colleagues have either been immigrants themselves or have sponsored a spouse, so enter the profession that way. So you were in the international student sector for quite a while. And I guess when you made your decision, that was right after the pandemic, or in the schools were really impacted. Could you see at that time the impact that the pandemic and how policy was forever changing, that there were going to be big changes in the student sector? Because now, of course, we know that there's caps and there's letters and things like that. It's really been impacted.
Yeah, I knew things were headed for a change. And I actually read the room. I could see some of the problems emerging in the international student sector in Canada. And I did think that that we were headed for some trouble because it really was becoming a bit too big and unmanageable. And you heard more and more stories of international students not being treated well, their DLIs not taking care of them. This was before even we started seeing stories about international students using food banks and so forth. So I really felt too that it was a time when I could really help international students and current and former international students in a way as an independent RCIC in a meaningful way, because I knew a lot of them needed help, and institutions can or would only go so far in helping these populations. So I thought it was a meaningful time for me to shift, because my focus really, most of my clients are aspiring current or former international students. And actually, most of my clients are in Canada right now. I have very few clients from outside of the country. So I'm happy with the timing. I'm saddened that we have seen all the challenges that in the sector. I'm optimistic that that we're heading in a positive direction with some of the changes that Mark Miller has brought in this year. I guess all that is to say is I was talking to enough people and seeing what was happening to know that that the timing was right.
Right. So now you've been on your own since, I guess, just not even a year, although you've been an immigration consultant since 2016 and sort of have been peripherally in the field since 2010. So, and not only have you started your self-employment, you've also got other big changes in terms of your location and you managing that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? And maybe the question I'll say is, as you've started your business, what have been some of your biggest challenges, taking into account other lifestyle changes that you have as well?
Yeah, well, so my lifestyle changes, as I mentioned. So I'm doing this podcast from Buenos Aires, Argentina right now, where I've been for nearly 6 months. As part of our business strategy, my husband and I thought financially it would be very challenging for us both to quit our jobs, go into business together while living in downtown Toronto. So we thought it was good to marry our new life and business change with a location change, because we dreamed about during the pandemic. Actually, we plotted out a 1-year trip around South America, and we ultimately never did take that 1-year trip around South America because our goal shifted to relocating and living in South America. So we are now international students in Buenos Aires. We are learning Spanish here. We are getting residency through our language school here. So we're actually undergoing a migration process in a new country. We are international students here, which is really good empathy building experience, because I'm living what my clients are going through. I have the linguistic and cultural changes. I have the practical matters of finding an apartment, which bank do I work with here, and feeling how do I integrate into this new society as well. So I think it's really helping build understanding of what my clients go through, even though I think I had quite a bit of that, because having been married to a newcomer, I've also lived in 2 countries before. I lived in Macedonia and I also lived in France for a year. So I'm very much a migrant myself. I'm a Manitoba-born migrant, and I love the world. I think people from around the world have so much to teach each other, and I'm very thankful for the opportunity to relocate to Argentina, and another country full of immigrants with a big history of migration, especially in the early 20th century. And it's been wonderful. But back to your question, I took on a little bit too much. quitting jobs, moving out of Toronto, growing our business, and moving to a new country and working in a new language. It was a challenging and exhausting fall, and our business suffered as a result. I could see the impact, just because in November, for example, we weren't able to work as hard on our business because we were going through other life changes, and then when we saw our income decline as a result because our life was unstable. It's really only around January, February that I feel like things have started to smooth out. And now, March and April, we're seeing now that our business is being a lot more productive as a result, because our own lives are stable. So the lesson learned is maybe not too many major life changes all at once. Maybe do them one at a time. But my friends have told me that both my husband and I are the type of people that we don't just do one big life thing at a time. We do 2 or 3.
Yeah, and the other thing you were saying to me off air is when you moved, you've invited a lot of your friends and family to come visit, and many have taken you up on it. So that has meant you've been entertaining and not always having the
Yeah,
time to devote to establishing your business. So it's I really love the fact that you can really empathize with the journey that your clients are taking, and you're really running your Canadian immigration business outside of Canada for your clients who are in Canada. That's a little bit unique. So I guess, COVID has really brought on the era of Zoom, and you and I are Zooming today. So do you find it, there's been a challenge with the fact that you're outside Canada and your clients are in, or you've been able to make it work?
I have absolutely been able to make it work. I'm another RCIC who will help me with paper-based applications on the rare occasion that those are necessary and need to be printed and sent within Canada. But my clients don't want to meet me in person. They want to meet me on Zoom. Um, I think it would be different if I worked with employers or if I did a lot of LMIAs, for example. I think I would need to be on the ground in Canada. But I have clients who aren't necessarily in Toronto. I work with people from across the country. So the COVID really changed everything. Before COVID, I didn't have an office, but people would want to meet me in a cafe. They build trust with a real human in person. The pandemic changed all of that. I People build trust in different ways through sharing about themselves on LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn as my main platform to share about myself, so people can get to know me, to know who they'd be working with. And it's fascinating to talk about how the pandemic has changed things in terms of migration too. Last night here in Buenos Aires, I went to a digital nomad meetup. We don't Digital nomads tend not to stay in one place, but it's fascinating to meet all of these people who have not had a home one guy has been on the road for 3 years and he just works
Wow.
remotely, moving one country at a time, which is a whole nother conversation in the world of global mobility that isn't part of my actual work, but I find fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting how, thousands of years ago, it was life without borders. Um,
Hmm.
and really, so many, there's so many people now who really have that global migration lifestyle. In to some degree, that's been you. You lived in 4 different countries, and you don't want to be constricted. Yet at the same time, you have states or countries like Canada who want to protect their borders. So it's kind of a very fascinating discussion, and we could probably totally go down another route if we wanted
Absolutely.
to.
I
But
have a
sorry, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, I was just going to say there is a book on that I read. It's called Move. It was one of the a very influential book for me, and it's written by a futurist, um, Parag Khanna. That's his name. Move by Parag Khanna. Really talking about how in the 21st century, humans are going to be moving in very different ways than they have been in the past 100 years, especially because of more we're seeing more escalating conflicts between countries, which concern us all. We're seeing escalating climate events that are going to impact where people are able to live. And so I really think heading in, as we look ahead in the 21st century, as Canada continues to grow as a country that's an immigrant destination, as we continue to, we want, we're very protective of our borders, but also want to welcome people in to grow the country. I think, despite the short-term changes we're seeing in 2024, I think the vision remains for in the long term for Canada to be a destination of choice for top talent from around the world. But I also think we're going to see people moving in ways that we haven't really planned for across the world. So I think it's definitely a fascinating time to be working in immigration and global mobility. And this is why I think moving to Argentina and learning a new language will hopefully help me prepare to contribute to some of the challenges that we're going to face in the years ahead.
Yeah, and this is going to lead me to my last question in a second, but I think it is a fascinating time to be involved in the immigration field, whether as a representative or working somewhere else peripherally, because the world is moving at lightning speed. I mean, with the changes in technology and politicization and economics. So we definitely have to be on our toes. So I guess, Matthew, the last question I have for you, um, what did- what advice might you have for somebody just starting off today, or what, did you wish that you had known maybe either a year ago or in 2016? It's a tough question.
Yeah, but I remember when I got my license, and I wasn't trying to open a business. I was so focused on just getting my license and passing the exam, becoming an RCIC, that I really focused all about immigration knowledge and what I did and did not know. I think so. The advice I would give new RCICs, one thing I learned early in the years is to be humble and be comfortable acknowledging what you don't know. Don't feel you have to know everything about Canadian immigration. Nobody knows everything. Sometimes you'll have to tell a client you need to look things up. Sometimes you'll have to consult another legal professional. Don't feel bad about it. You can't be a master of everything. And I think that will take some of the pressure off yourself as you are starting in the new professional, that you don't have to be perfect in every way in terms of immigration expertise. But then on the other side, what I needed to know in 2016 that took me years to figure out is the business side of this. Some people do work for companies, but most RCICs, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Monica, I believe most RCICs are independent like me. And I did not get any, I do not have any experience in running a business. I've been an employee in the post-secondary sector for many years. I never realized how much work there is that goes into running a business behind the scenes. And so I think in summary, my advice for new RCCs is find mentors, find people who are comfortable offering you advice, find people who will share what they do, tell you, figuring out which website platform to use, for example. What are you going to use for emailing? How are you going to track invoices? How are you going to do payments? There's a whole world of business planning around running a business that I was not prepared for in 2016, and I'm thankful through my work experience that I learned different things. I'm really good. I spent a number of years doing recruitment, so sales and marketing, I'm great. I did student advising, so again, that's where I'm great, working with clients and helping them strategize. I used to be a teacher, so I can do presentations. And then I'm fortunate that my husband loves operations and project management and all the behind the scenes things. So our skill sets are really complementary. And the things we've learned in the corporate world before we became self-employed. But I was not ready for that in 2016 when I first got my license. And I think having a couple mentors on the business side and maybe a couple mentors on the immigration side are really valuable. And I think most RCICs are happy to share their knowledge and happy to help those who are entering the profession, because the general sentiment I have always felt is that we're not competitors with each other. There's enough work for everyone, and that we by helping each other out, we make the entire profession stronger.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you that at the end of the day, most people are happy to sort of share what's worked for them and what hasn't. And I think really at the end of the day, we just want people to be competent in what they do and really make that effort. But you're right. We come out with that immigration knowledge, but we don't come out with that whole business end of things. And I think it's having those realistic expectations, right? To know that it's not going to happen overnight. You have to sort of start with a plan and go from there. Matthew, I want to thank you for your time today. You've given us lots to think about. I've written down some notes here. I hope our audience today can recognize a little bit of themselves in you and your journey. It's been a really interesting one, and you're really just at the start of it when you think of it, right?
Very much so. I'm very excited for what the years ahead will bring.
Yeah, and I'm very excited to sort of hear how your life is going to evolve in Buenos Aires. Hopefully, we'll see you back in Canada from time to time as well.
Absolutely. I'm already planning a spring trip back to Toronto.
Oh, excellent. And I hope you'll come back to us and update us where you are in terms of your life there and your next stages of your business. It's been fabulous talking to you.
Thanks so much for having me, Monica.
And thank you to your audience for listening and being part of this today. We look forward to seeing you at the next one. Take care.